Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Stars Align with Matthew John, the show where we talk about the stars with the stars. This is episode number 1. My guest today is Alan Steinfeld. Alan Steinfeld is a writer, producer, and speaker in the fields of human potential, metaphysics, conscious evolution, healing, creativity, spiritual awakening, and cosmic intelligence. He informs millions through his websites, lectures, YouTube videos, and weekly television program called New Realities, and thousands visit his website, and he's at over 12 million views on his YouTube channel. Alan, thank you for joining me.
Well, thank you. Really good, Matthew. Great to meet you in Las Vegas. That's a great place to meet people, isn't it?
Oh my
Las Vegas.
God, absolutely. What an amazing time that was. Alan and I met at the Stairway to the Stars conference in Vegas. Incredible. What a
I
great job
actually
they did.
introduced you. I introduced you, and now
You
you're
did.
introduced.
You introduced me, and it was very, I would say, divinely guided because, of course, they had technical difficulties getting it ready for me. So we had about 5 minutes to go back and forth telling jokes to the audience, and it was 9 in the morning, and it was the best way to get everyone woken up.
No, I'm glad you appreciate jokes and humor. That's my best sense, is the sense of humor.
Absolutely. And I do stand-up comedy on the side. You probably couldn't tell from there because I don't know if I was hitting real
I
well
can
with the
tell. No,
crowd, but
no.
um and Starseeds is something that we can kind of touch on in today's show if we get a chance. And
Sure.
I do believe I'm a Syrian starseed, and a lot of Syrians are very funny people. And I think, who knows,
Is
maybe
there
you are one as
comedy
well.
on Syria?
Oh
Aren't
my
they
God, on what
serious?
the Syrians have told me many times over and over, and they've shown me how they gather in these public community gatherings and potlucks, and they tell jokes and they put on funny shows. And they actually, the way they teach their children, the way we teach our children on this planet is by sitting them in these tiny little desks separated from one another and throwing books on them and making them study. There they teach in with humor and drama. They teach with theater, actually, on Sirius. It's how they teach the stories of their people and how they teach the laws of the universe. So
Do they tell jokes about Earthlings? You
I
know,
don't know. That's a great question. I'll
like
have to
two
ask them next
Earthlings
time I
walk
channel
into
them.
a bar, and what's that one? Yeah,
Yeah.
and the first one gets
Three
knocked out,
Earthlings walk into a bar and they blow each other up.
or they walk into one Earthling. Yeah, they walk into the bar. The first one gets knocked out. The second one sees the bar. It's like that. You know,
Wonderful, wonderful. So, Alan, you have been hosting a TV show called New Realities in New York City
um,
for over 3 decades, right?
it looks like that. Yes, I just got an award for that. It was I guess it's this. It's the
There you go. Yeah, yeah,
Neighborhood
yep.
Network Award for service to humanity, sort of like to the public,
Wonderful.
to whoever's watching the program. Which it's a little far out for a Manhattan audience, but
Although Manhattan, I'm from Long Island, and I
I'm from
live in.
Long Island.
You are okay. I'm from Center Reach.
I'm from Wantagh, Nassau County. Yes.
Okay, okay. You're a little bit closer to reality. I'm more
Yeah.
out with the
Yeah.
crazies, but um
Yeah.
Manhattan, living in New York City, like, I mean, come on, Brooklyn and Manhattan, you've got a lot of people that are into like anything you can possibly come up with.
Right. That's why I'm here, because
It's
it's
the I
like
see it as the meeting point of the world. Think a lot of us do,
it is
right?
a great world capital, and there's a lot of there's a lot of great free thinkers here. There definitely are, free thinking people
I
here.
think, in Men in Black, that's where all the aliens were conducting all their business, was in the city, right?
Yes, people seem very alien here sometimes. It's true. True.
It's
What's
hard to
your
tell.
interest in alien? I didn't know. I didn't even know. I missed your lecture. So what attracts you to aliens? I mean,
Wow. Yeah. I guess a little different in the whole UFO New Age community because I don't come from having direct contact experiences, although I had an experience with a definite non-human being, but it wasn't a ship. It was like actually seeing them in person.
wow.
But my fascination has come from the perspective of star seeds and discovering through my own spiritual awakening experiences that I, know my soul actually comes from outside of this earth realm. So that's been my main area of research over the past decade plus is the soul's origin rather than aliens per se.
Well, me too. I feel like I'm a star seed, but I think we're all star seeds. We're genetically manipulated to upgrade the primates that were here on planet Earth, and they were, modified from stars, from alien races, ET races, to be Homo sapiens sapiens. So,
Yeah, there's a lot of this idea out there that the Pleiadians and the Lyrians in particular, or the Lyrans, whichever you want to call them, had a hand in, the genetics of humanity itself. And we do look very similar to the Pleiadians, if you've seen depictions of the Pleiadians, right?
right.
And even to some Lyrans and Orion beings we look very similar to. They likely look very human. So you're absolutely right. It may go all the way back not just to soul origins, but also aspects of genetic origins.
Well, yeah, Gary Nolan says that DNA is older than Earth itself. He says it's 9 billion years old. The Earth is only 4.5 billion. So it may be the panspermia theory that there's, you know, anthropomorphic races that are all related to each other, but also the natural process of evolution. If the environment's the same, it'll generate similar forms, So that's another theory.
So, Alan, what was your fascination? Like, what got you into? You've been in this field way longer than I. I'm really curious to know.
Well, I think I'm a starseed too. I mean, I always felt really
Do
different
you
than the
feel
rest.
you're Syrian, by the way? Do you think you might be Syrian?
I can't really go there. People say Syrian, Pleiadian, Andromedan. It's like I think that's a fabrication of stuff that is
How?
filtered human consciousness, and I think there might be some truth to that. But if they're not showing up and say, "Hey guys, this is what Syrians are," then it's a kind of hypothesis. I do think it's possible that we're related to these other star systems. I just can't say, oh, yeah, I'm Syrian. Although some people, if you interview Sarah Brexman Cosmo, she says there's similar traits from different starseed families.
This is
And
exactly what I teach and write about. It's I come to my
I
talk in
know.
LA and let me try to change your mind, Alan.
Yeah. No, no, let's do that. But I can't say, I know him from somewhere.
Yeah,
I can't say it's Pleiadian star. Like, what
sure.
level of Syrian are you? From level 2 civilization? Are you from the interdimensional branch of the Syrian? Which planet in the Syrian star system? I mean, if you talk about even human beings, we've gone through many civilizations of Earthlings and races. So, you know, I think I'm from everywhere, and so are
Well,
you.
ultimately we are. Yeah, I mean, ultimately, no matter what, right?
What's the traits of a Syrian? Maybe I am Syrian. I think you could
Well,
agree.
okay. Syrian star seeds. There's a couple ones. They tend to be. We talked already about humor. They are
Right,
the funny people of the planet. A lot
right.
of comedians. I have gotten the intuition
Okay.
and the visions are Syrian star seeds. The ocean. We tend to and water in
Yes, I
general.
love maybe you're convincing me I am a Syrian.
we
But
we
what else? What
we
else?
working with crystals and being very attracted to crystals, especially quartz,
Yes,
because
I got a bunch of quartz around.
we're checking them all off here one by
Yeah,
one.
I got this incredible amethyst. Look
I
at
love
that.
it. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. All right. What else?
And
Listen,
the color blue. Usually we're very attracted to the color blue.
that is my favorite color.
Yeah, usually it's your favorite color.
It
So
is
those are
my
the
favorite.
four main ones, and every Syrian starseed I've ever met checks off all of those.
Well,
And
I
also, a
think
lot
there
of
might
times
be
we
a
do really like dogs because Sirius is also the dog star.
dogs are okay.
So
I mean, I've had dogs. I like dogs. I'm not like those people that have to, spend every day with their dog. But
I am.
well,
It's so hard for me to travel because I have to leave my dog.
I'm definitely not like that. I prefer cats actually, but I
Yeah.
do like dogs. No, I've met some incredible loving dogs. I mean, my brother has a great dog. I mean, I like dogs, but
And it would
I
just because
that's
Sirius is the dog star, and then cats are more related to Lyra. And the
uh,
reality is, most of us have multiple star origins. Myself,
right, right.
Sirius, Blue Avian, Orion, and
Blue
Andromeda. So
Avian, is that a real thing or is that just
of
something
course it
Corey
is.
Good made up? I mean, I think
Why would it be made up? Why would it be made up?
because before Corey Good started talking about it, he
No, people have been come
mentioned
on
Blue
before
Avian.
Corey, way before Corey Good. Thoth, Thoth.
Yeah, from Egypt. Yeah,
Yeah, that's a blue avian being. I mean,
it
the
is.
long beak
Well,
and
it's
the
an
wings.
ibis. It's a bird that you can see in Egypt. I just got back
Yeah,
from so
the blue avian ETs were in ancient Egypt, as were the Syrians. The Syrians built the pyramids, and the blue
I
avians
believe
were
that. Actually, supposedly there was a Syrian writing on the limestone that out was the outer casing of the Great Pyramid.
really
Yeah,
wow.
and that outer casing fell off in an earthquake, and it was built some of the mosques in Cairo. But if you go to those mosques, you can see some of that alien writing in the construction of those mosques on the limestone they used to build those things from the
Wow.
pyramid.
You've been to the
Yeah.
pyramids, right?
I would just spent a month in Egypt with
Wow.
work.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And
Uh,
yeah, it's pretty amazing. You could
it
actually,
is. One thing I tell people is like you see it in pictures and on TV. They're so much bigger in person than you can ever
they're
conceptualize.
massive.
You know,
They are the ancient wonders of the world and the and modern world and ancient world, and they're still impossible to build with the technology we are aware of. There was a Japanese company
absolutely.
to do it, and they could not because when you have you been there?
Yes.
Oh, you have been there, so you know you've been in the Grand Gallery and
Yes. Yeah. It's unbelievable. When you get there, you realize, yeah, there's no, I remember being in school and reading in our textbooks, and they had the little, illustrations of like, oh, the people pulling them up around. Like, come on, there's no way. There's no way.
well, when I was just there, I realized that there were these hieroglyphics, right? And then there's these older structures that had no hieroglyphics that were megalithic, huge 100-ton structures, which I think was a totally different civilization than the dynastic Egypt that started the hieroglyphics about 3000 BC. So there was a much older that goes back to the Sphinx about 10,000 or 20,000 or 30,000, probably Atlantean, where they just built these structures in big, big stones. My theory is they either levitated those blocks into place, or this is the theory that came to me when I was looking. I said, those blocks look a lot like the sand I'm walking on. Could it be that they had these molds, like out of papyrus or even clay, where they poured the sand in, mixed it with an emulsifier that hardened into a cement like granite structure, and then the mold just sort of dissolved. That's how I thought maybe.
That I'd never even thought of that theory,
Yeah.
the latter.
And then I read that is a theory that someone else had come up with, but it looks obvious. I mean,
Uh,
otherwise, we're talking about technologies that we like levitation or something
right.
like that.
I'll tell you
Yeah.
what the Syrians, have told me or show me through channeling
Okay.
is yes, moving the blocks using essentially frequency, just directing frequency to move these great blocks that they were built, obviously like away from the pyramid itself and then moved into place essentially.
Yeah, I mean, yeah,
And it was a part of rebuilding Lemuria. If you got into Lemuria and Atlantis at all in your research?
of course. I mean, yes, I studied with an Atlantean teacher, Ramtha. Do you know Ramtha, the Enlightenment
No,
one?
tell me.
Well, Ramtha is a being that's channeled since the 80s by this woman from Washington, and he was an Atlantean warrior.
Okay.
He was actually Lemurian Atlantean. I mean, if you believe all this, and he took the people from Atlantis and marched across southern Europe into the Indus Valley. And those Atlanteans and Lemurians became the foundation of the Indus Valley civilization about 35,000 years ago. That's the story. But yeah,
Okay.
he lived in the central port of Onai, and that was part of the second kind of quaking of Atlantis. You know, Atlantis lasted about 100,000 years and also had Lemurian immigrants because that continent had already sunk or was beginning to sink completely in the Pacific. They crossed over into what is now the Atlantic Ocean. It was the Romans that turned the S to the C. It's really the Atlantis Ocean. That's where Atlantis was. So
Makes
right where it was
sense.
called Atlantic. Well, because of Atlas, the king of it, the first king of Atlantis, but really it's where Atlantis was. And because of the flooding and the quaking and the earth changes, the oceans came in and flooded that continent.
Yeah, it's interesting, and like, and this is also another indication of like the whole thing of like who really knows, because there's a lot of different theories on the end of Atlantis and Lemuria and the time frame and things like that. I've read a lot of Edgar Casey's,
Yeah, I love Edgar
receiving.
Cayce. Yeah,
Me too. And just, so my belief, it was 13,000 years. It was about 12 and a half to 13,000 years ago, and it
right.
was nuclear war that destroyed Atlantis and Lemuria. It was two political factions in Atlantis that ended up waging war on one another, and then also waged war on Lemuria because the elites of Lemuria got involved. And essentially, both continents kind of destroyed one another. And it was after the end of both continents that there was, an influx of refugees, like during the wartime, where you're talking about, to the Nile Valley, and that became ancient Egypt. And the Syrians building the pyramids for the people were kind of like it was this almost ceremonial rebuilding of the earth itself.
Yeah, no, I think that's a possibility. I think it goes back, yeah, it probably goes back 30,000 years. The pyramids and the Sphinx might even be older, marking the original head of the Sphinx was not a pharaoh, it was a lioness. And that lioness left paw guarded the Hall of Records, which Edgar Casey says is under the left paw. So they put the Hall of Records here, and then they constructed this lioness as a protector of those records, which still have yet to be found, or maybe some people say they haven't. But yes,
Or what if they're just at an alternate frequency?
they could definitely well be. There's a guy named Manu who says he's found some of the original Hall of Records from the Atlantean time. So there's a lot of stuff going on that's possible for
It's
sure.
so fun though to try to just uncover all these ancient mysteries, right? Of the planet itself. You've got the Bosnian pyramids, for example, right? Have you been there?
No, I haven't been there. Have you?
No, not yet, but it's on my list to go very soon.
But
Um,
I was looking at an old interview with Robert Lawler, who's quite a genius. He coined the term sacred geometry. He wrote the first book on sacred
okay.
geometry. And this is his last book, The Geometry of the End of Time.
Yep.
And he calculates the yugas, but he also works a lot with the pyramids. He says if you take the radius of the moon and put that on top of the radius of the earth, so you have the earth and you have the moon above it, and then you put a line through the diameter of the earth and connect it to the top of the radius of the moon, that is the exact proportions of the Great Pyramid. So
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I have heard that before, actually.
yeah,
That, and which is such an amazing confirmation that like it had to be someone that could see that or knew that, right?
right, exactly. And not only that, the moon itself is an artificial satellite that was pulled there into place.
That's such an interesting question because, and all right, I want to hear your take on that because I have thoughts on that too, but I want to hear your thought.
Well, for me, it's obvious that, there's no such thing as that kind of coincidence where seen from Earth, the moon and the sun are the exact same size. Of course, they're different sizes and different distances apart, but you line it up perfectly, it does almost pretty much eclipse the sun, and the sun eclipses the moon. So that, and it also shows one side. Most planets or moons rotate, but this rotates in proportion in relationship to the Earth. So I think it was built there to not only affect the tides and move the water and clean the ocean, but what's much lighter than water is air, the atmosphere. It actually moves the atmosphere in that same tidal flow that the waves are moving. So there's and it also protects the earth from meteorites that, might hit the earth. I mean, of course, occasionally some do, but it's sort of a protective shield. So it was put there into place by an even more ancient, probably 100,000 years ago, to balance the energies of the earth.
And I'm totally open to that theory. I've read, stories from like ancient indigenous civilizations in Africa that claim there was a time before the moon, that their ancestors said there was a time before the moon. If that were true, though, my question is who put it there? And was this it? Because there's a lot of people that have this theory, and sometimes I personally think it gets into a little of the paranoid realms that essentially it's an evil thing, that the moon is this evil reptilian extraterrestrial base
Yeah.
and it's used to control humanity.
I don't think so. I mean, I think it was co-opted. There's a book out, Who Built the Moon? And I think it was a really benevolent race that put it there hundreds of thousands, 100,000 years ago. I mean, supposedly no one would even be able to see the sky in the Atlantean times because there was a thick cloud cover around the earth. And when Atlantis activated their crystal technology, it created this laser type beam that started the condensation of those clouds, which became these oceans that had flooded the planet. So before, in the Atlantean times, we did not even see the moon or the stars. It was only after that condensation that the stars and moon were able to be seen. So that's one theory.
So yeah, this is so fun because that's like a totally new theory to me, what you just described with, the Earth being very shrouded in clouds and them using technology to create
Well,
the
like
oceans.
Venus has the, every planet goes through that same cycle of evolution. There was lots of water on Mars for a long time. That what we're seeing as the Martian surface is the remains of those seabeds. It was as much water or maybe more than the Earth, and something happened. That's what some people, that was an atomic war or nuclear war happening on Mars that lost its electromagnetic field and just, its life forms had to go underground. So yeah, I
That would
mean,
make sense from an astrology standpoint because Mars is the planet of war.
and Venus is the planet of love. So we're right here between love and war. Isn't that interesting?
Absolutely. And that, that's why I love astrology so much, is because every planet teaches us something crucial about ourselves and especially about humanity, about how to conduct ourselves as a collective. But yeah, Venus for sure, I believe had life, and maybe even still does, just at an elevated dimension. A lot of people claim even to have contact with Venusian beings even now.
I mean, I met someone, I don't know if I believe him, Raymond Keller, who's a friend of Rob Potter. I'm going to release this interview on my YouTube channel, who went to Venus and spent
Okay.
time with the Egyptians. I don't know if I believe
I'm
him.
gonna have to watch that. Yeah, just for
He
fun.
seems like a perfectly normal sort of guy. Yeah,
A
I
lot of
don't,
us in this field don't seem like that though either.
yeah, I don't know. But I'm glad you're an astrologer because I'm not concerned, but I'm interested in how Pluto is now emerging into Aquarius, and I'm 1 degree Aquarius. And what happens? Well, first as Pluto enters Aquarius, but also how can I use it when it really aligns with my sun?
Okay, and this will be fun. We can actually look at your chart if you want, just for fun. But for you and like everyone watching this, please, watch my 2024 astrology preview on my channel here because I talk at length about Pluto entering an Aquarius. But briefly, Pluto, this is the most momentous astrological transit we've had since 2020, when we had a bunch of difficult conjunctions that led to the COVID pandemic, right? So this is the book ending 16 years, 2008 through 2024. Pluto in Capricorn was it was this kind of hyperbolic growth of, I call it disaster, well, not just me, but the term disaster capitalism capitalism without any empathy. You know, the oligarchy of the planet doing anything by any means, including creating wars that, you know, kill people in mass and that, you know, starve people in mass, and in order to accumulate more and more wealth. If you look at the wealth gap now versus 2008, it's grown exponentially, right? Where the
Right,
handful of people like Elon Musk at the very top own
right.
way more than they did before. So that's because Capricorn is hierarchical in nature, because Capricorn is ruled by Saturn. So that's why Saturn rules over the Illuminati. Saturn rules over governments. Saturn rules over hierarchical structures, top-down hierarchies, right? Where Aquarius is in by nature egalitarian. Okay, Aquarius by nature is equal in all parts. So we're moving into an inevitability. Pluto marks epics, right? We're moving into an inevitable epic over the next 20 years of seeing equality of resources on the planet. So the next, you know, the rest of this decade, in one way or another, there's got to be some sort of at least beginning of the transition between that top-down hierarchy of the planet to a more egalitarian, equal sharing of resources for all people, not just governments, but for all people.
So that's where we're coming into a more egalitarian.
The astrology says yes. And the other thing the astrology says is that Aquarius rules over technology. And because of that, the next 20 years, we're going to see the technological revolution, the AI revolution. And the principle that technology is logarithmic, right? So that the logarithmic, the parabolic part of that graph is going to take off and already is, right? Where an AI inherently is logarithmic, you could say, because AI creates upon itself, right? You create AI to create new technology, and then it goes in a cycle, and it keeps creating based on what it has already created itself, and you know, way back humans created it. So we're going to see AI take over in all ways. We're going to see flying cars. We're going
That
to
a
see the
good thing? I mean, would you say?
like anything, you know, seeing things from a non-dual perspective, it's both good and not good, right? The good part of it is convenience, right? I mean, I think we're not too far away from seeing gas cars being completely obsolete, and even
Yes,
seeing
I hope
driving
so.
yourself being obsolete, you know?
Right, right. No, I think that's looking like it's coming, especially as we discover the ET technology from the captured UAPs that they already have inside government that they're reverse engineering. And when they're forced, the corporations are forced to acknowledge what what they put together from this reverse technology, then game over for the fossil fuels. If it really was fossil fuel anyway, that's just a myth also.
And I think that's what's coming. I think that's what's coming in this Pluto and Pluto and Aquarius leads us into the planetary age of Aquarius. So most astrologers will say that the planetary age of Aquarius starts around 2043, 2042, 2043,
Some people
2024.
said it already started in the
I know.
60s.
Yeah, I know. Some people, and I used to say that too, like 2012. The way I see it is it's doorways. We keep opening new doorways that are inching us into it. And in the context of like the galaxy itself, have you heard of the idea of the photon belt?
Yeah, I've heard about that for about 20 years. Yeah, what
Right.
about it?
So the idea that our solar system itself is moving towards the galactic center. And the way I see it, it all started with the harmonic convergence of 86. Right. Actually, it started
87.
with my parents in the 60s when we had the lineup of 8 planets in Aquarius in 1962, 63. Right.
Well, 63 was a pivotal year, which
63. Yeah.
was, the killing of Kennedy, which was the blast into the Aquarian age. I mean,
Yes.
we
Yeah.
went from an old
The first
world,
waking up point, right? Like,
first
wake up, everyone.
frequency,
There's something going on.
first, like I knew when I was in second grade, when I heard the word assassination, I knew there was a lot more to that than just someone shooting.
Yeah.
And so it was an awakening into it. And that was, Aquarius, the dawning of the age of Aquarius. Of course, there's always the dawn before the
The
rise.
song, the fifth dimension. This is the dawning of the
Well, the
age of
play,
Aquarius.
got that from the play Hair. Hair,
Right, right,
which
right.
is a kind of attribute of Aquarians, is all about that awakening to the Aquarian nature. So I think
So I
I
think that was the first doorway. The second doorway was the harmonic convergence, which is when I was born, like right during the harmonic convergence,
I
essentially.
remember the harmonic convergence,
Right?
1987.
Yep.
It's August 16th and 17th. When were you born?
I was born October 86, but I think I was a little kid. My mom was, I
Well,
don't know if I
that's
was there or
when
something, but
Jose
she was doing
Aguirre
something for the harmonic convergence.
No, Jose Aguirre first started to really talk about the harmonic convergence in 86.
Yeah.
I saw him speak and he said, the it was the beginning of the last what do they call it? Age of hell, that
The
began with
Kali Yuga, the end of the Kali
well,
Yuga, right?
well, it was also based on the Mayan calendar, though, which was the ninth hell when Cortez
Okay.
landed in Mexico. There were 9 52-year cycles, which was the end of this age of hell. And those last 12 years, from 87 to 2012, marked this new time. And people like Terence McKenna would talk about the 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 object at the end of time. But I think they could have actually been off and pointed to 2020 when the COVID thing happened and it was a whole reset. So it could have been off by 8 years, the convergence and all that, because there was a convergence.
I understand why you'd say that. I don't think it was off. I see as each of these as different doorways that were, they're just, it's an inching forward rather than a one entrance. So
Right.
63, 80, 86, 87, 2000. Okay. Because do you remember back in the 80s? And, I wasn't even alive, but I read a lot of stuff from the 80s. All the channelers were saying 98 to 2001, the poles are going to shift, right? And there's
Yeah,
going to be these
that's what Remta
calamities.
actually said. I mean, there was a lot of that, but there weren't that many channelers in the 80s. There were a few like major ones. People were talking about the poles shifting. I think 2001, the World Trade Center was another timeline shift there.
Absolutely. I mean, and it's so funny. You mentioned like you were in second grade when the Kennedy assassination
Yeah.
happened. I was in eighth grade, and I will never forget seeing it on the TV 9/11. And I just, as soon as they showed the photos of the supposedly the passports of the 18 terror, I'm like, come on. I was in eighth grade, and I told the other kids like, yeah, there's something going on here. This isn't right, and they all thought
Yeah.
I was crazy, of course. But I knew, that was a waking up point for my generation, you know?
I know those are what they call flashbulb moments. Like
Yeah.
time freezes, it becomes etched as a turning point in a
Yeah.
timeline. There are
It's
timelines.
isn't it amazing how like everyone in New York City and even New York State, like again, I'm upstate, like will never forget what they were doing on that
I think
morning.
everyone around the world, it's not just New York that
You're right. Yeah.
I wasn't even in New York. I felt like I lived not far from the World Trade Center, but in August of that year, I felt like I just had to get out of the city. So I went to Hawaii and I heard then someone wakes me up. I'm camping in Hawaii and said, New York's been attacked. And, so it's just a very,
Yeah.
I think if I was here, I probably would have been under those, been looking up as, so maybe that's why.
Yeah. And then 2012, right? And then 2020. And then I think now, we're entering what I believe is the next major thing in the timeline. The next major awakening is true first contact. Is true
I
first
agree.
contact.
I think that is, and I think we're getting glimpses of that. I think 2024 is the year when mass sightings will be seen, not just over places like Phoenix, like the Phoenix Lights, but in lots of major cities, we're going to have mass sightings, and people are going to say, whoops, it's going to be a big "I told you so" moment for people like
And
us.
now, one of the things a lot of people have read about and heard about this whole idea of Project Bluebeam, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Where the
I don't believe anything Stephen Greer says.
not just him though, not just it's not just him. But okay, so you don't buy into the idea that the dark beings might fake alien sightings
No,
for whatever
that's just
agenda.
a fear tactic by people who
Could
want
be,
to look important.
could be,
I
yeah.
think no, if they wanted to do that, They would have done that a long time ago. But this strategy, I feel, of these space beings, whoever they are, is to come and go, plant little seeds of possibility,
Yeah,
disappear. This is how learning takes place in cognitive studies. You give someone a little bit, they digest it. You give them more, digest it. So
true.
it's this slow accumulation of consciousness that happens. So no, it was
Did you ever
something.
hear about in like 1979 in Britain there was the airwaves got taken over
Yeah,
and supposedly it was a Pleiadian.
Colin Andrews actually has a recording of it, but
Right,
that was a really friendly thing in
right,
1970.
right.
Yeah, you know that song "Calling All Intergalactic Beings"? It was taken from that message. That
Okay,
the Carpenters did that song, "Calling
okay.
All Interplanetary
I'll
Craft."
go listen to it after
You
this.
don't know that song? You got to hear
I
that.
probably do. I don't know. I'll have to remind
All
myself.
Karen Carpenter. It was song written by someone else, but that was taken from that message that came across the television sets in Britain, southern Britain in
And
1970.
supposedly that was the Pleiadians that were essentially warning us, like, hey, we gotta.
No, who people name these things? It's like
I like to name them. I like to figure everything
no, but
out.
nobody knows Pleiad. This it's great, but it's a mythology. People, there. Look, I think there's something out there. There's definitely beings. Where they're from, what their passport says, who they are. I don't think we really know. I mean, maybe some people know, maybe you know, but I have a hard time saying, oh, that's Pleiadian, that's Syrian, because it doesn't mean anything. Yeah, there's certain tendencies for
Uh,
certain races.
we can agree to disagree on that, my good
All
friend.
right, that's
All
fine.
right.
That's fine.
I that's like, and maybe it's because I'm a Virgo moon. You know,
Right,
Virgo is about details and about labels and about words, right?
right,
So
right.
I want to try to dissect my goal. My goal in this whole new age field is to take this idea of star seeds and star origins and actually make it scientific, okay? And not make
How are
it
you going to do that?
so
How are
airy
you going to
fairy.
make it scientific?
Well, because by gathering evidence, I've gathered evidence from. It may not be evidence that would be accepted by a university at this point,
It's
but maybe someday it
speculative
will. But
patterns. You're showing patterns that,
patterns, but I've conducted hundreds of regressions, so hypnotic regressions over the
oh, okay,
years to
okay.
guide people to different places in the stars
Didn't
to
you just
gather
say
data,
it
essentially.
helps me?
Alan, I want to take a look at your book, and also
Thank
the
you.
link for making contact is in the description box below. So make sure you pick it up. I found it interesting. This is from page 44. And because this is a question I get asked a lot. I have had many dozen people over the years that have come to me for guidance and psychic advice, and whatever I can help them with, that were abducted by the Greys or
I
were.
was.
You were? Okay. Or were some people claim to have been in the secret space program. Some people
I wasn't.
claim to have had actually been taken off planet and been impregnated, and then they had a miscarriage on Earth. All sorts of weird stuff, weird encounters with reptilians, things like that. So people come to me for advice because not my two main paths of research are, one, all this Stargent stuff, and two is the soul's plan. Okay, how does the soul plan things out? And I have always found, just through my intuitive receivings and my channel guidance, that nothing is by mistake, even when it comes to contact and abductions. There's a soul contract there that for whatever reason, one soul
Yeah.
desired that experience. It's not a random world, and people choose to be a UFO experiencer. People choose near-death experiences. If we assume that everything happening in the UFO world is random, nothing makes sense. So nothing is random.
I
And
don't think I think that's in the chapter by Grant Cameron. This book is a collection of essays. Those are his notes, but that's fine. I do think, according to some people, you do choose your abductions, but then you could say those kids choose to be starving in Africa. I mean, it's a fine line between, I think that I'm really happy that I did have contact. Maybe it was abduction, maybe it was an evolution of consciousness, because it opened me up to these other realities that would not. I would have walked around like most people, like this, just seeing what's in front of me, being told what to do, by the authorities or whatever. But because this thing was so out of the box that maybe I did ask for, it helped me explore new realities. It helped me be really excited about what's possible.
Was it kind of a point of awakening where it made you go seek?
I was already like that. I think I had experiences as a child, so it already made me think differently. I already felt differently as a starseed. And actually, when after I had an abduction, then I had a regression, and I saw the beings, and they kind of, I mean, the abductions are traumatic. I'll tell you
Yeah,
that.
that's what
And
I've heard from every single one.
when I saw those beings, they kind of congratulated me on going through all that and making contact and awakening to my potential. So,
I guess ultimately, is it something positive? Is it something that one's soul is chosen as, an experience to awaken versus something that versus being a victim of it and it being a
well, you
random
could say
occurrence?
everything is for us. There's no such thing as a victim.
Yeah,
That's a
I
same
agree
looking
completely.
at
Yeah.
it. I do think, though, contact with ETs, even though they're traumatic, is an evolutionary element. Some people wouldn't agree with that because there's some people who've never recovered from that trauma. So I think now that it's becoming more accepted, it's less traumatic. So this is why we have to talk about this. If you've had a weird experience or something you didn't understand, um, don't be freaked out by it, but see it as a mind expansion. So I think we're
Yeah, and there's so many, like, for any people watching this, and I'm sure there'll be a handful that have been abducted or have had contact experiences. Just know there's tens, hundreds of that, probably hundreds of thousands that are out there as well. And it's so helpful to actually come across and share your experiences with others. And if you talk to me, again, me not having direct experience with ships, but having a weird experience with some creature, and
did you have a
working
weird
with
experience with a
dozens of people
creature?
over the years that have been abducted,
You've had a
and I would
weird
never wish it upon anyone. It's a traumatic experience, but the same token, I do believe that there's a reason on a deeper soul level that that was chosen.
Yeah, no, I think we're in a flux, and I think the advanced work like me and you have done, we're preparing people for it's less traumatic when we do have these mass landings, if that's what's going to happen.
And let's finish off with that. I want to know what do you see, feel, or just what do you think is going to happen with these mass landings, and maybe even when? Like,
Well,
what's it going to look like?
I think it has to go hand in hand with disclosure. You know, the more the government acknowledges it, the more it's in people's mind, the more they're ready for this event. So the subtitle of this book, Making Contact, is Preparing for the New Realities of Extraterrestrial Existence. You prepare first by knowing something's real. If something just shows up or someone knocks on your door, if someone just knocks on your door in the middle of the night, then you get a little shocked. But if someone says, I'm coming over, then you're not so shocked. So
Yeah, yeah.
people coming over, and we have to. So the more we can put pressure on the government to release the information, the more open disclosure is going to be, and the more evolutionary progress we can make. So they're waiting for us, but they're now, I think, putting pressure on the government because they say, look, your planet's really suffering. We need to get there in time to at least save the environment and or what's left of it. So we're at a really crucial time in history.
So, and I agree. We're at an absolute crossroads right now. And if you look at, like, it seems on the outside that the world is getting worse and worse. Climate change is getting worse and worse. Like, it doesn't even snow upstate anymore. The
Right.
war,
It used to snow all the time in the city. It's much warmer the winters.
it is so noticeable the last 10 years how much warmer it's getting.
Yeah.
People in the South, like, don't notice it, but if you live here or north, you notice it.
Well, there was a 60 Minutes thing about the wine they grow in France, and it's gotten too warm to grow a certain grape, but they're growing this grape in England now. So the
Yeah,
French wine industry has moved their sort of focus to England, which is now can grow the grapes that were originally
yeah.
growing in France, but it's too warm now for those
And
grapes.
the permafrost is melting all around the world. It's
I know.
releasing all sorts of metals that have been held there, and also viruses and bacteria.
I didn't know
Um,
about that, but maybe.
well, no, look it up. Yeah, look it up.
Wow. But I want to ask you before we get there, can you talk about what happens when Pluto enters my conjuncts my sun in one?
Absolutely. I'm so glad you asked, because this is the stars align, where we talk about the stars with the stars, and part of talking about the stars is talking about astrology, because I'm an astrologer. So let me share. Is it okay if I share your natal chart for the world to
Yeah, you
see?
have to show my birth date though, but you could show the chart.
Okay, so of course you're an Aquarius. You are so Aquarius. Aquarius people are so chill. They're so affable. They're so easy to get along with. They're so go with the flow. But you're Pisces rising, and I'm a Virgo moon.
Taurus moon.
I gotta put labels on everything, where you are more like it's taking in the whole and the idea of things, but not necessarily having to crunch it into particular labels and things like that,
Yeah.
right? And also Pisces rising people are so creative, so creative. I bet you well, you are in I was gonna say you could have gone in entertainment. You are in entertainment, right? In a
I
way.
am. I
Yeah.
am.
So okay. Your so what's interesting about you, if we go to, we're gonna pull up your wheel, or in the South as they would say, wheel. Um your
But you
north node. So the north node is, you know what's so interesting?
what?
You and I both share North Node in the ninth house. Okay. North Node in the ninth house people, our soul's purpose is about research and discovery.
But look at where look at where my midheaven is. It is a very certain degrees in Sagittarius. You
Yeah,
know what that?
you're at 27, right?
You know what
27,
that is? That's the
29.
galactic center.
Oh, you're correct. That is the galactic center. That's correct. Yeah, you're wow.
Midheaven
Wow. It's
points to
a
the galactic center.
Of
Yeah.
course. Yeah, that is the galactic center. So your entire life's mission, your purpose in this world is that discovery. That's incredible.
And
That's
the other
absolutely
thing
incredible.
about my chart, I'll just point out because I've looked at this
Yeah,
before,
yeah.
is the Sun Uranus opposition, which makes me
Yes.
even more Aquarian.
It sure does. Yeah. It
Yeah.
sure does. And to have the sun in your 11th house, right, in Aquarius opposing, so it just really emphasizes community for you, right?
Right.
And being
Exactly.
a part, being like and it makes sense. Like every single, gathering out there, whether in person or online, I see your name, right? Because that's who you
Yeah.
are. Yeah.
Right, right, right. But so when Pluto now goes over that, what does that mean?
Yeah, yeah. So let's see. So when Pluto enters, so Pluto's entering right now. It's here. It's going to be entering into the first degree of Aquarius. Pluto. It depends on how Pluto's aspect in your chart. For you, Pluto is benevolent because it's conjunct Jupiter. We could say, and Jupiter, gives life, and Jupiter in Leo is a good thing. Jupiter is very comfortable in an expressive sign like Leo, so it really gives life to Pluto there, and it's gonna amplify both spiritual evolution for you, and also this feeling of being um kind of in the pinnacle of your role on the planet. So it's going to
Mhm.
be very benevolent for you. It's going to amplify and step. So for some people, Pluto is not a very well aspect. Pluto is trining your midheaven at the galactic center. So it's going to amplify things in a very positive way for you. Yeah, Pluto can be Jekyll and Hyde. For me, Pluto, I'm Plutonian nature because my sun and Pluto are literally conjunct in
Mm.
Scorpio. So for me, anytime I use the energy of Pluto, it's very benevolent. Same for you. Pluto will always be good to you. And
Yeah.
the other thing, it isn't in your sixth house, so it could mean some sort of change in routine. It could be maybe you're going to travel a lot more or a lot less, or
Right, right, right.
something like that. But yeah, conjunct your sun, like you can expect a very positive year of expansion. And the conjunction itself is in the 11th house, so a lot of very positive meetings with all sorts of people like
Mhm.
myself, and people
There you
way
go.
more well known than me, that all over the
Okay.
world for the
Okay.
next year.
Great, great, great.
You are
Oh,
just
I am.
astrologically an exhibit of the Aquarian age.
Thank you. So, So wait, I didn't realize that the sun and Pluto are conjunct and they both go into Aquarius at the same
They
time.
do. Yeah, yeah, on January 20th. Yeah.
Wow, that's
20th,
amazing.
21st. Yeah, and it just shows us how benevolent this passage of Pluto into Aquarius is, that the sun is lighting
Oh,
it up on its entrance. And you're right
oh,
there because your sun is right there in the
that
11th
is
house.
such a good point.
Yeah.
That is a really that I haven't heard astrologers say that
Yeah.
about
And then
when
it'll
for the year
retrograde
when
back. This year it retrogrades back. It touches into Capricorn again. So we have
oh it
one
does.
last toe dip back into Capricorn, and
Oh,
that's right around the election time. That's one of the reasons
oh,
why I know Biden will be reelected, is because it's when Pluto's in Capricorn. And again, he was elected with Pluto in Capricorn. But shortly after the election, it'll go back into Aquarius, and then it'll be back into Aquarius permanently for the next
right.
20 years. So
So does the Pluto give me
so
like
essentially, Pluto will be right around your sun the whole year. It'll be right around your sun for all
does
2024.
that give me extra energy to do things I could
Yes,
not have done?
absolutely. Especially with it being in your sixth house conjunct Jupiter, it'll give you better health, and it'll give you just more energy to do what you're doing on a planetary scale, and for it to up level, essentially for you to be more seen. So
Great. That is
yeah,
very good
good
news.
stuff. Thank you, Alan, for letting us share your chart.
What
That
about
was so much fun.
what you don't have on my chart there is Chiron and three
Yeah,
degrees
I didn't input Chiron, but
because
where was your
Chiron is right there too. So
your Chiron's at what in
I
Aquarius?
think it's either yeah, it's right there. It's a stellar. My Sun, Chiron, a Mercury. They all kind of create a
So
little.
right at the end of 2023, going into 2024, Chiron stationed in Aries, getting ready to go direct. Now it's direct at when we're filming this is released. So Chiron is the wounded healer. Chiron is both the source of our deepest wounds and our highest potential as healers and service workers, right? So if your Chiron is conjunct your sun, and especially with what we showed, it is a part of your nature. So your part of your nature is to take the stuff, the trauma, and to alchemize it. So that may, astrologically explain your experience with the Greys.
Okay, but then when Pluto goes over my natal Chiron, what does that mean?
Well, it depends. How is Pluto aspect? Again, Pluto's very well aspect in your chart. So for you, it goes along with everything we're saying, where it's just activating the healer potential in you. For others, it could be rougher if Pluto was negatively aspect in their chart. It's all nuanced. You got to look at how the
Right, right.
planets is a planet kind to you in your chart or not. If Pluto is kind to you, so anything Pluto does with other planets will be on the higher possibility, the
Right.
higher
The
timeline of
other
it.
thing I wanted to ask someone about my chart in particular is the Mars Saturn conjunction in
Yeah,
Sagittarius,
let me bring
which
that back up.
I'm drawn to Sagittarians, and I
Right.
think you see the Mars Saturn
Yeah,
conjunction.
yeah, exactly. And
What
it's
does that mean? I thought
eighth
it
and the
might
ninth.
be very
Well,
constant.
first of all, travel. It makes you a traveler.
Mhm.
Anyone with Mars and Sagittarius ends up traveling a lot, right? And
Right,
then
right, right.
Saturn in the eighth house is, it's a couple of things.
But the fact that it's conjunct, it kind of structures the passion there a little bit, isn't
yeah, okay, yeah, and it's opposite your moon, right?
it?
And your moon's in the second house in Taurus, so part of it is financial. Moon in second house in Taurus generally is going to be very good for finance, especially with it being opposite Saturn, and it's going to show financial success coming through anything that's related to travel. So if you get asked to do things that involve travel, they should likely pay well too. Um,
Okay, thank you for that. That's a good reading, but no
so
one's
so
given.
that
You know,
makes
I've
sense.
had 30 astrology reading or hundreds maybe, but that's a good one no one has said before.
And,
So
and also Saturn in the eighth house, in general, is about past lives, and it's about accessing like deeper parts of self that aren't access on the surface. So which you've done in regressions and also the
right.
extraterrestrial stuff and like that.
But
Because Saturn is, Saturn, we can talk about structure, we can talk about someone's father, and we
right.
can talk about finances, and then we can also talk about
But so
past
you're
lives and
talking
karma.
about past lives, but the North Node is also the future. So
The North
it's
Node is the future.
So it's
and the
interesting. The past and
south
the
node is the
future come
past.
together there, right?
Yeah.
In
Yeah,
Sagittarius.
exactly. You're an alchemy of, and these aren't that close, they're about 15 degrees, but
Right,
they're
right,
close
right.
enough to, look at it. But yeah, the alchemy of like understanding the deeper levels of self in the past lives and the star origin stuff, and that being a part of your role. The North Node, I think a better way to look at it rather than future is to look at the service mission, or and it's part of it is like what is to be learned also internally, right? And when it's
Okay.
in Sagittarius, it's about courage, overcoming fear.
Before we go, let's just
Yeah.
like kind of like talk about, I mean, if you have something, just a little bit,
Yeah.
why these ETs are there. What does that mean for consciousness? And who are we really? Because I think our consciousness is not local. It's not of the evolving primates. It actually comes from the stars of the cosmos. And we're here to
That's what a
spiritually.
starseed is.
Yes, but I think I think consciousness in general is not an evolutionary element. It descended. It didn't
Well, I think
evolve.
we have to separate consciousness and the physical organism. The
Right, right,
physical organism itself may be genetically derived from primates, right?
exactly.
But
Right.
the consciousness comes and you know comes
Yes,
into a vessel.
involution and evolution at the same time. There's
Correct. Yeah.
evolution of the organism and involution of the divine consciousness, which we
Yeah.
are.
Yeah.
So that's my theory. And that's what I think the ETs themselves are trying to wake us up to.
Absolutely. And those of us my understanding is that those of us that are star seeds, like you and I, and probably most people watching this, are at the leading edge of the tide of conscious evolution on Earth. So if you think about if you go down to Coney Island and you see a big wave coming in the winter, right? And there's a white cap, we're that white cap. Us that are the star seeds, we're the leading edge, pushing forward the entire collective envelope of humanity, right? And I don't believe that all humans are necessarily star seeds. I think a good portion are, but I think a larger portion are what would be termed earth seeds or organic consciousnesses, where one's soul origins also derive from the earth itself. One's soul began as a single photon donated from the planetary consciousness itself and evolved through the plant and animal kingdoms, as the Hindus tell us about, versus star seeds like you and I and most watching, where our souls evolved somewhere else off planet and decided to come here for an experience and to contribute.
Right, right, right. No, that sounds great. I like everything you're saying. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Okay, so this year we should expect more contact.
Well, yeah, contact and acknowledgement and disclosure, but it's already showing up in people's dreams. It's already showing up if you
For
talk to
sure. Do you
contactees.
see a time, an event where, like in some of the movies, whoever the president is like literally shaking hands with an alien?
Well, did you see that there was a UFO that flew by Biden's Air Force One a few weeks
I
ago?
think I did. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I don't know if they'll shake hands with the president, but I do think like if people gather, and maybe I'm going to plan a gathering at Bell Rock, uh, we can call these ships in.
Yeah, I'm doing a retreat in Mount Shasta in May, and that's definitely part of my intention is to make
All right.
contact with the Pleiadians over and the Telosians in
And
the
the
inner Earth.
Telosians,
Yeah,
I know I met some Telosians. So,
you did?
but yeah, I met Sharula Dux, who said she's from the Telos,
Do you
actually. So,
believe her? I'm
you never know.
okay.
But
I,
I like
I'm so fat. I haven't gone that deep into the Telosians. I will when I go to Mount Shasta with my group, so I'm excited about that.
Oh, yeah, the Telosians there's definitely an inner Earth civilization. I mean, I feel
Yeah,
them, I sense them. They seem to be all
the
around.
Agarthans.
The Agarthans,
I mean,
yes.
even Three Dog Night knew that.
Yeah, I mean, lots of people knew it.
On the
Admiral
road to
Byrd knew it.
Shambhala, right? The song.
Admiral Byrd. What's the song from Three Dog Night?
The road to Shambhala.
Oh,
Shambhala is
right, right.
Agartha.
Well, the whole story of Shambhala is a story of in the inner Earth, right?
Right, right. Yeah.
I mean, Journey to the Center of the Earth, Jules
Right.
Verne.
Yeah, Jules Verne. Yeah. Back to the Future, right?
Back to the Future. All right.
Oh,
Thank you, my friend.
yeah. Thank you so much, Alan. This was really fascinating. Again,
People can buy my book on Amazon for
yeah,
sure.
buy the book. The link is in the description. So the book itself, you've basically it's a collaboration of
Mhm.
you and many other wonderful writers in the field.
Well, I think nobody knows. That's what I'm trying to say to you. No one knows what's really going on. So I think the best overview, this is my first book on the UFO subject. I have a book on alternative medicine they wrote
Okay.
before this.
I'll put
But
that link in the description box too, by the way.
but since nobody knows what's really going on, everyone has a little piece. It's like, the guys with different parts of the elephant. You need to see a mosaic for the reader or people just introduced to this to get an idea of what's all the different perspectives, what's everyone saying. So the best introduction is not, oh, this is my truth. There's all these different truths, and the reader has
I
to
love it.
decide what
Yeah,
makes sense for
I
them.
love it. Fantastic.
Yeah.
Like I shared that one chapter that I bookmarked,
Yeah.
that really resonated with me. So, I love what you did here with this collaboration.
Well,
Wonderful.
thank you. I really appreciate that. So,
Absolutely. And anything else coming up? You and I
yeah,
both will be,
we're going to
yeah,
be in LA.
we're both going to be at the Conscious Life Expo. So the link to that is below. Tickets are available. My talk is Sunday night. When are you?
I'm
You
going
have
to be speaking
multiple?
Friday. I'm going to be hosting a couple of panels
Okay.
there.
Perfect.
I'm also going
Perfect.
to be speaking in Sedona March 8th to the 10th at the Sedona Ascension Retreats. Go there. So
Excellent.
put that in the link below. I'm going
I
to
will.
be speaking in a bunch of places. There's the
Excellent.
Contact in the Desert in May.
I
So
I hopefully will be there as well.
you should be there. Well,
I'll
thank
be
you,
there.
Matthew. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Alan. So all the links are below in Alan's website and Alan's YouTube channel, the New Realities TV show. Check it out. I was watching, just preparing this morning for you. I was watching an old interview you did with Bashar Daryl 8 years ago, and
Yeah.
it's just so cool to see the archive of all the people you've talked to over the years and the evolution of people's careers in this new age field. So it's a great
Right.
archive as well.
Thank you. Actually,
Yeah.
Dara wrote a chapter for this book as well.
Oh, wonderful. I will check that
No,
out.
I wanted the range of people. I got Nick Pope, who worked for the government,
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
people having contact, to researchers like Linda Moulton Howe, to people really like Carolyn Corey, who might be the closest thing to an ET we have.
Sure.
So there's a whole level, there's a whole spectrum. You want the full spectrum.
Absolutely. All right. So check out the book.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alan, for joining me on The Stars Align with Matthew John.
I really appreciate your
Yeah.
story. Thank
Okay.
you, Matthew.
Blessings. Thank you.